For those of you that have done my knit-alongs before, you know my favorite thing is to map out the whole pattern. So believe it or not, this is how Japanese knitters work, and I can now throw out all the words because everything I need to knit this pattern is right here at my fingertips. So I want to show you the way I do it. Everyone can come up with their own little annotations. I have my own little method. But the thing that's great about this is if you are going to change anything, you'll be able to see at a glance the domino. So for instance, say you were working at a different gauge and you wanted the smallest size, and you did your math and you saw, okay, instead of casting on 137, what I want to do is I want to nip away 2 stitches off of each side. So in other words, it's going to be 133, right? Because you're taking away 2 over here and 2 over here. Then you're going to know the result, the domino effect every place else, because you've already decided what your total stitches are at each place. So what I like to do, here the example is the small. I always put my stitch count in a box. So here I've cast on 137 stitches. I work 3 rows in garter. I knit 51 stitches, place marker, 35, and 51. So I know at a glance I have 51, 35, and 51. So for instance, if you were nipping stitches away, you would write out all of these numbers and then erase this and go, okay, 49 for me. Because remember from the video of how this works, this is the triangle we're not going to change. Okay, next, what I like to do is use these little hash marks to indicate my shaping. So remember, this shaping is a little unusual. It's not, most sweaters, the number of stitches at the side the number of stitches in the middle, stay the same, and you're nipping away at the side. Here, we're nipping away in the middle, and that's part of what gives it this shape, pushes this down. And this also mirrors the little triangle in the back. So here I work to the marker, I slip the marker, I have a knit 2 together. I work to 2 stitches before the marker, I have an SSK. So I do it once. You always establish your shaping once. Then I know I repeat this every 6th row 15 times. Now when I finish, I know I'll have still 51 stitches on this side, because remember, I'm changing the stitches inside the marker. So I've changed 35 to 3. So now I have a new stitch count at the chest. I'm at 105 stitches. Then I always put my rows in a circle here. So right there, I'm working 17 rows straight. So isn't this nice? I can just travel with this one page. Now I always put my bind-offs like I draw a little line under my bind-offs. So here's bind-off 5, and you'll notice I only really write things on one side. This is bind-off 5 stitches at the beginning of the next 2 rows, then bind-off 3 stitches at the beginning of the next 2 rows. Then I have my armhole shaping, right, which is knit 1, knit 2 together, and I repeat that every 2nd row 5 times. Now, here's another great thing. I do not measure my work in progress. So when it says, now work straight until armhole measures 3 inches, what I like to do is translate that into rows, because your finished row gauge is blocked, and that might change. So I know that I have 2 bind-off rows, then I have a decrease, then I repeat that bind-off every other row 5 times. So that's 10, 11, 12, 13. So I know I've worked 13 rows. And so I know if I work another 11 rows at my row gauge, that will be 3 inches. So now are you getting the sense of why mapping things out is going to help you if you are working to a different row gauge, or if you want to change the neck? So the first thing I would suggest everyone do is map it out as written, and this will help you make those changes. Now I know my stitch count has changed. I'm now at 71 stitches for the neck. Okay, now I work 31 stitches, join a new ball, bind off center 15. So now at a glance, I want to write down, isn't this so much easier than all those words? I know I bind off the center 15, and then I have a 4-stitch bind off on either side of the neck and a 3-stitch bind off. Then after that, I know my decreases begin with my knit 2 together, knit 1 on this side of the neck, my SSK, my knit 1 SSK on the other side. So I do my decrease, and I repeat that decrease every second row 11 times. Oops, I forgot. I then work 3 rows straight. There's my little notation for my rows. I know there's my 17 rows straight, 11 rows straight, 3 rows straight. And I also know that that will leave me with 12 stitches at the shoulder, and I have those bind offs. So at a glance now, say I was altering this, I know that if I was knitting 2 stitch gauge, I have 53 stitches in this whole neck opening. I have 12 stitches at each shoulder. I know my stitch count everywhere, so I know how I can alter it. So the idea of mapping out a pattern is not only so that you can throw away all the words and just knit off of this, which is literally how I knit, right? No need for words. But also so that at a glance, this can help you alter things. So if I'm working a different row gauge, I can figure out how many rows straight I need to work to bring my neck up to the armhole up to 3 inches. Or if I'm reading the tutorial on altering the neck because I want it 1 inch higher, then I will easily notate how many rows straight I have to work. And then when you're following the tutorial on changing the neck, you'll also be able to really visualize a little better why you can either change the rate of shaping and do some of this shaping every row to make that neck higher, and or you can combine that with binding off more stitches here so that you have fewer rows to decrease. So there you have it. That's the concept of mapping out. Everybody has this blank in your pattern that you can print up. Print up a couple. Print up one to write out the size that you're working as written. And then if you are altering anything, either because your row gauge is different and you're making the same shape, your row gauge is the same, but you're lengthening, shortening, altering the neckline, or both. Your row gauge is different and you're changing the length or altering the neckline. If on top of that, you're nipping stitches away, things get a little more complicated, but it's not impossible. You can figure it out. And you're double checking your counts before you pick up to knit. Same thing with if you're doing the trick of knitting 2 different sizes. Say you read that sweater mod and you decide stockinette is going to be your front. So you're going to knit a larger size for the stockinette side. Well, now I know that I have to decrease more stitches at the neck or have a larger number of stitches bound off so that by the time I get both sizes up to the shoulder, they're the same number of stitches and I can bind off. Okay, I hope the video overview of the sweater and the video overview of mapping out your pattern helps make a little more sense of those tutorials. Take it slow, do the math. It's not that hard.